Good evening. Hi, everyone. So great to see such a crowd here. I'm thrilled. Thank you for being here. I'm Marjorie. I'm the director of the museum. Welcome. I am so happy to be able to introduce Val Sivilli tonight. Val is a painter and a printmaker. She holds an MFA from Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers and a BFA from SUNY Alfred. She has been an adjunct professor of art at various colleges. She was the director of the original Steamroller Gallery in Frenchtown and a current member of the Steamroller Group and Artist Collective. Yay! Val is also a founding member of that, the Hunterdon Art Tour. I'm thrilled to have the Beasts of Hunterdon County here. The work we have throughout this building is fabulous, but when I walk into this gallery, I feel a sense of warmth and humor, and it's just such a nice thing to be able to experience these. We all need to smile and to feel that home, in this case, Hunterdon County, is the place we want to be. Val, you have put the beasts in perspective. Thank you. And you are known for storytelling and for the narrative that you develop in your work, so I am really eager to hear what you have to say about these. So I'm going to turn this over to you. Thank you, Val. Thanks for sharing these.
Well, I'm a little verklempt. There's a lot of you guys out there. Wow. So I haven't been in front of a group in a long time, but I'm going to chat about this stuff. I usually like to talk for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'm not one of these real long chatters, and mostly because I get really kind of tired of hearing myself. But I will answer questions when I'm finished talking about it. But thank you, Marjorie, for inviting me. It's really Marjorie who chose this work for this space, and it was really, it's the Mighty Mojo. Yeah, he has named it.
I heard about it. One of the beasts under the county.
Yes, anyway, what I wanted to do is, what this show reminded me of was that it came at a really interesting time for me, creating this work. I tend to work in like chunks of series, and this work it came at a time right after I did a lot of very, heady, painful, hard work, and I needed to stop doing that. It was like a whole series of work that I did that was taking 6 months after, during the whole election before Trump got elected, and from 2016 through, when did he take office? Like 2017 or 18? When was it?
Well, 2017.
He was in, but January is 2017. That was the Women's March, 2017, January, right? But the summer, I started, I turned 57, so I did this series called 57, and it was really about creating work that dealt with a daily practice of every day, doing drawings every day of something very normal, like I might actually draw this microphone for every day and put it in different positions every day. And then every day I would sit and listen to the news at 8 a.m. and I put that drawing into my typewriter and I type the news over my drawings. So after 6 months of that though, I was going crazy. I kind of started to be like, just like this, all the time. So I decided that was time to stop, in which case then I started painting women who were shooting at you. Like, I don't know if you guys know that series. There's a series of assassin women. That was the next one. So I didn't get the anger totally out of my system. It just sort of like built up. And then around 2019, I was tired, I was just tired. And knew I had to stop doing this series. And that series of angry, kind of politically driven stuff. And I was driving from my house to my studio, which are only about a half a mile from each other, from my partner's house to my studio. And I got to the Regalsville Bridge, and it stops, and there was a stop sign. There's a stop sign there. And I'm like, I just really need to figure out what I'm doing next. I don't know what I'm doing next. And as I'm sitting there, a raccoon walked up to my car. And I was like, and it's the middle of the road. And I was like, and And I'm like, he was just like that. Reflectors coming up in my car. And I was like, yo, guy, you probably shouldn't be in the middle of the road, but he was really hungry. It was the end of the summer, it was hot, it was dry. And I thought, we're not paying attention to you guys lately, to the wildlife that lives here, to the, there's a voice here of life that needs to be elevated, that needs to be listened to. We're not paying attention to that. And I got to my studio and I had this roll of paper and I just started to do the very first ones. That wasn't the first one, but the raccoons that were all done in the beginning are gone. They've been purchased, so which is nice. For an artist, it's always nice to do that. So for the next, was it about a year and a half I did these, and there are about 24 altogether, and they just needed to be. The reason this became for me the next step was partially because of my eyesight, which was, being very, doing all those drawings. Sometimes I'd be doing it in the evening and it was very dark and I was really, using up my eyesight. When you're in your late 50s, your eyes start to be very tired. And then, looking at these very careful guns and these, to try to paint these guns and make sure that they were convincing coming at you and all the perspective and all of that kind of work got really tiring. So these, I just loosened up my brush stroke, everything became larger and a little bit more gestural, and it was more physical, which is a lot more natural for me to be, sort of like a big stroke kind of artist. It just felt more like, oh, thank you. And then also the scale of each piece, taking the animal and making it bigger, so it was bigger than human, giving it that physical presence. The fact is that this work, though, I always had this little kind of conflict with it myself, because if we're really doing something about the power of nature, maybe this work should be a little more organic. It should be like watercolor on paper, something sweet that might be more close to the earth. But these are plastic. They're basically gesso, plastic gesso, gessoed on both sides of a piece of paper, and then acrylic painted on top of them. So if you really get up to them, they're basically plastic. They're not very delicate. So that conflict, that's like internal contradiction between something natural, something that feels very natural, but coming through the human and the world that I live in. It's like, I live in this world. I use plastic. I can't not. I drive a car. I'm in a car. It's using gasoline while I'm talking to this little animal who, it's like you're living in this constant state of contradiction while you're living on this planet, trying to do something good, right? So the work itself, though, is very cathartic for me. And then there were 24 pieces, and I just actually wanted to share the scope of these. I should have opened this before, but I did not, because it's slow that way. Just a second. I did have it open, then it's closed. Okay. But I just wanted to show the scope of these to you. That there are. All right, so this guy, Marjorie did not hang. Why did she not hang this? Shouldn't she have? Squirrel with ball.
Squirrel with his nuts.
And I remember talking to her about this. I'm like, Marjorie, the kids are gonna love this. They're so much fun, but she didn't hang it. But there are quite a lot of these. And let me see the raccoon. The first raccoon that I did. This was the very first one I did. So this was the raccoon that actually walked up to my car, took a picture of him, and he was like, "Hiya." So yeah, there are 24 in the series, and this guy, right there. Get back to him. I was gonna I didn't want to do too much of this, but sometimes you just kind of have to do a little.
Are they on your website?
Yes, they are. They're on this particular page is actually on, I'm actually rebuilding my website right now, so it's on civilianart.com. This one here is one of the early ones, and that one is over there. And that's to me, my favorite one. For me, it's in my collection. It's the only one I will not let go of. Oh, unless somebody, everybody.
Everybody has a price.
Yeah. Everybody has a price. We all do. But that's the one I want to keep for myself. So I feel like that, to me, speaks very much about the integration of the beast into the human. And it's also related back to a series of stories that I did. This is what Margie was saying that I do have. Just put this down here. I'm opening this again. So there's that. Called The Wild Boar. Now, in about 2015, I went back to, I gave up a design business that I ran called Civilian Art, and I decided I was no longer, it was a t-shirt company, some of you might have some of them. I think Dory has some, maybe Bonnie has some. I think some of you have some t-shirts.
I know.
Yes, you have. So I think I've been in business since 1996 in Hunterdon County, so it's actually a pretty pervasive company in this area. It's very local, from Frenchtown. But in 2015, I had this realization after doing all of these fairs that my kids were just about out of the house, and my daughter was almost finished with college. My youngest animal was graduating college, right? And I was like, I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to hustle shirts. I don't need to hustle this life. I could go back to teaching, go back to what I love, which is painting. So in 2015, I wrote this little story about the wild boar. It was just the first book. And I went out to New Mexico for 3 months, and I had a beautiful response from my community. I did how do you afford that, right? How do you just ditch your business and then just go away for 3 months? But I had one of these GoFundMe things, and I know some of you gave money to me, so thank you again. But that really transformed me and changed my life. It helped me to make the transition from being a working mother and hustling to getting back to the artist life. And that was a really important time for me. So I went out to New Mexico, spent 3 months out there trying to make this wild boar story work. And I couldn't make the wild story boar work, the story about the wild boar work on these big paintings. Ultimately, I did by the time I was just about to leave. And this series of the wild boar is the result of that. So a lot of these beast paintings and the idea of the beast and the beast, I should have done the Chihuahua.
You should.
I should have.
Next book.
I think next book, right? But you know what I found out about dogs? Once you start doing dogs, everybody wants their breed. And then suddenly you're doing, right? There's a dog here. We'd be welcome with the beasts. But the idea that there is something inherently animal inside of a person, that animal that lives, was something I was grappling with. How feral is it? How tame could it be? How civilized need it be to be like real. I mean, I was telling Miriam this just before. I was just on the phone with my car insurance company telling them I wanted to cancel my car insurance, and they said, why? I was like, it doesn't matter why, I just want to cancel it. So they were like, well, you'll have to sign a form to tell us that, why you want it and, send it back to us. I'm like, why? I could just cancel my car insurance. He's like, well, I don't make those rules. I was like, I could cancel my car insurance and park my car at my property. You don't have that right. And so I got so angry, and I thought, oh, there it is. And I'm like, and he's like, well, then you might get a ticket. I'm like, that's none of your business. My next insurance is not your business. My car getting a ticket in my yard is not your business. You're just an insurance company. So I thought, oh my God, and the system that we're in just makes me so mad. But it's like, yes, I'm too old for this. I'm too old for this. But this one, wait, number 5 is the one you have, right? Mm-hmm. So what I wanted to do before I kind of like wind up or ask for questions is I wanted to read this book. It's not very long. And Liz is I'm going to read, and Liz is going to show you the images.
Show you the pictures.
Show you the pictures. So this is first.
Everybody get cozy.
So the cover first. The book is called, I'm going to stay over here and it's called Diva Diva, Music, Lyrics, and Endless Drama. The Wild Boar, this is episode 5. This is called Diva Diva, on the perils of being Italian. This book is dedicated to opera lover Michael Dupler, who's not here, who lives in New York, who took me, you know Michael Dupler, you, Susan, and Kavani both met him, who took me to the Met and graciously watched as my eyes rolled back in my head. And to this beast, who as of late requires a significant audience. Things tend to get complicated around here. Sometimes I feel like I'm in an opera, an art form I have coveted, but not yet able to truly appreciate. Being Italian, you'd think opera would be fused with my DNA somehow. Italian is defined by dense, impenetrable drama with a robust articulation. Anybody else Italian out here? Yeah, there you go, right? You know. Christina and
Pretty close.
What is pretty close? Greeks are pretty close. Same Mediterranean thing going on. Yeah, right?
Snort.
Yeah. Snort?
Think about
Okay, later. Oh.
it.
Could my inner animal have knowledge of the southern Italian heritage of its bodily host?
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's my mother-in-law. Figured. Oh, Barbara. Maybe it recognized the totally skewed amount of pasta, sauces, and cheeses ingested throughout his and my early development. So the idea of this wild boar is that it lives inside the physical body. It's as if Italians can't help but think that their own lives are akin to an opera. Because like it is! We are endlessly performing at breakneck emotional speed. I want to love the opera. I want to love the opera, and did I say that already? It's because I really, really want to love the opera. Inevitably, every time I go to the opera and try to listen to an opera, I fall dead asleep about halfway through the second act. It's always halfway through the second act. Always. It never varies. It's like there's something, I'm so excited to get through the first, and then the second act comes, and then it's like it's like a drug, right? It's not just falling asleep. It's the most profound, deepest kind of sleep. The kind of sleep that sucks you into your subconscious mind like a syringe sucking blood out of your veins. The dream sequences inside my brain, because the opera's going on at the same time, right, become seamlessly intertwined with the vociferous arias fluttering throughout the atmosphere. I am helpless. The beast takes charge. puts me to sleep so it can access my senses for itself. Now, if you notice this guy is like that guy. I think that's why I like this guy so much. It's like the beast, right? Images do repeat in artists' places, right? It like it possesses some kinds of thought pattern that needs expression through the integration of music, lyrics, and the endless drama of the diva. Bonnie's a little bit of a diva. I don't know, I'm just remembering that. Is it possible that my singular, albeit lonely, internal beast is levitated by an aspiration toward the diva, or could it actually want to be a diva? Now that's something to ponder. Or maybe it is writing its very own libretto inside of me. Because I wouldn't doubt that. My lower back has been uncharacteristically sore recently, and I've been spewing out profanities a lot more regularly. Not like I don't do it all the time, but more loudly and in D, not my usual preferred key of E. And you know I like E. I do. There.
You're right where you
You're-
That's
that's
right.
right.
You're
That's
right.
right.
You're right.
Yeah, you're pretty
Damn.
close.
Key.
Damn. You in damn?
No.
Key is the blues key.
Ah, damn. What is it that this beast wants? Maybe it wants to play Figaro. I think it just wants to be a diva. And it's an egomaniac. And it needs a haircut. And that's it, the end. That was very nice. So I think I don't know if I've totally used up my actually brain space, but I'll just talk a little bit about where I've gone from here. These were completed in 2020 was the last one I did, so I was finished with these in late 2020, and then I kind of just wanted to get back to doing some direct printing, to bringing, to go back to canvas. I was missing oil on canvas, like even though, painting on this was very satisfying, I was like missing the smell of the oil paint in the studio, missing the way the brush kind of like, hits the can. I just missing all that. So I did a bunch of series of cat paintings, cat-like paintings, which are also very fun. But it didn't really feed me as well. So I started going back to body printing and doing, but not my body. I was using the dolls that my grandmother had left behind after she died, that I had all over the place in my studio that my daughter didn't want and I just couldn't throw away. But I thought, wait, they could be, I could print from them. So they became the source of a lot of work. Again, still deconstructing that Italian family, deconstructing the self, deconstructing who you are, as who I was as a person, and why certain things existed in the world, inside of me, that needed to be either, I don't know if they ever really go away. Obviously, today I had that thing on the phone with that insurance guy, so obviously it doesn't go away, but you can see it clearer. You can apologize while you're doing it, or not if you're pissed off to somebody, but it's there, you know what it is, and you can, it can be cathartic to help you understand yourself better. And, basically that's what I hope artists can do. That sounds like a good place for me to say. Thank you. If you have any questions, So I'm going to leave the rest of the time for some. How much time do we have in going forward?
As much time as you want.
Oh, okay. All right. Any questions? Anybody want to ask me anything? Yes, Liz.
It's a limited palette. How did you choose the color?
That was really conscious, because I think what was happening is I was trying to be less confusing, to myself. Because once you start adding a lot of different color, I think this was the most complicated palette of the entire series. But once you start really kind of grappling with color, for me anyway, it becomes a much more difficult journey, of rectifying the thing. So I wanted it to just be more almost like black and white, but just a step away. Yeah.
I have a question about the inner beast. I'm very curious about that, because there's a lot of art artists, like I'm thinking about Picasso and the Minotaur, and
Mhm.
there's other artists who felt there was something inside them that they quarrel with and relate to, almost palatable, that you can feel it, you can fight with it. Is that something that you always felt that you had as an artist, that was a conversation between you and it, so to speak? That was
I'm sorry.
for our art, to make your art.
I think so, yes. I can tell you that there was a moment I remember, like, there's always defining moments of stuff when it starts, right? I had been to the Neue Museum and I saw the Egon Schiele show in 2015, so it was so beautiful. But there was a whole room of women, postcoital women, like, spread eagle and all, and it's 100 years later and we're still putting people in jail for this. I mean, he was put in jail for, 2 years, I think, for profanity or something. But I thought, wow, he really just laid himself out this way. And I went home after seeing that show, because I loved Egon Schiele ever since I was in college. And I was walking down on the river road, down near the Delaware River, and I thought, oh my God, I think I have to do something that exposing, like really open myself up physically, physically. So I do have these photos hidden of myself, like spread eagle and doing. Nobody's allowed to see them, but hopefully my kids never found them. But but it was like a moment, like it was like, oh my God, you're like looking inside of yourself, and then I thought, there's a monster in there. I'm sure there's a freaking monster in there. There's got to be some beast, and that's sort of where it started. It's like the idea that there's actually something tangible, physical in there that you grapple with, as a being, as a human, I think, to kind of grapple with your demons. So that kind of way of thinking about it became the metaphor to kind of move forward.
Thank you.
I just reread Steppenwolf recently, and it's kind of reminding this talk of struggling with the beast side of yourself. The main character Harry Holler in that is kind of wrestling with his wolf side. So.
Thank you for reminding me about that. It's been a long time since I've read Steppenwolf. You can stand up. It's okay. Yeah, go for it. No worries. Yeah, thank you. Did you? Did I inspire you to reread it, or
Actually, it was before the show. So
Oh,
it's kind
okay.
of sort of a weird kind of coming together of that.
That is. It's
But I will say I didn't enjoy it much on the second read, but that's neither here nor there. It used to be my favorite book, so yeah.
Well, it's good to revisit stuff like that. I mean, that was also revisiting these when Marjorie asked me to do this, and she came to my studio, and I was showing her all my recent work. Okay, nasty doll being eaten by big monster. Not going to go too well in the summer session up here on the third floor, where the kids are walking by it all the time. But when she actually said, you have those big animals, and I was like, yeah, I've never shown them all together in one place, and they need to be seen like this, I think. And I was really happy that she did that. So maybe I'll read Steppenwolf and see if it resonates for me. Is there anybody else? Comments?
Just wondering how you chose the animals, or the raccoon came to you.
Right.
So how did the other animals?
Well, we have a lot of squirrels that, who, as I read about, know us better than we know them, because they can live 20 years on your property. And I was like, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. And I thought, and I started to think about all the animals. I put animals in my work often. I mean, we don't have wild boars around here, so it was like, okay, there's a disconnect there. Why is it a wild boar, and why is it hiding in my body? I want something really regular, something in my life that felt accessible, that was my community, that was my land, that was what I was close to. So I was choosing, there was a lot of animals I would have liked to do. And I did do some birds, and I would like to do more birds, I think, and even more. I did a lot of fish in the past, so I didn't do fish. But there are trout, and there are, shad. I mean, there are ways to bring fish into it. But because I did so many in the past, that I didn't want to. It's just being more connected to what actually lives by me. So and not be exotic about it. Like, could have done lions, but you don't really have any. It's like, that are wild, right? I mean, I did that Marjorie reminded me, we really don't have wolves here anymore. It's like, but there are some wolves living up on Church Road, I think.
Coyotes, lots of
We have coyotes, right? Yeah, I should have called that coyote.
Val, you were talking about the residency you did in New Mexico. There's definitely wild boars.
Oh, there's wild
Running
boars
around
there, yeah,
there.
that's true. So it wasn't a total disconnect.
Wasn't, not at all.
Not really, yeah, not totally.
Talk a little bit about your residency. Where was it? And
The residency was in a place called the Wurlitzer Foundation. It was right in Taos, New Mexico. And basically there's 11 fellows that are either visual artists, writers, musicians that get invited every 3 months to live there. And they're given a free place to live, and they pay for, just they don't give you food or feed you, but they pay, if you need it, I think there's money that you can ask for, but if they give you all your, expenses are paid for while you're there, your internet, your electricity, kind of thing, your cooking thing, whatever you need. And it was, you're just left alone. I mean, if you wanted to sleep for 3 months, you could sleep for 3 months. But, you could. It was, I think Lean Wurlitzer, who wasn't really, she was like, it has to do with the piano, but she was married, the Wurlitzer music company. But she was married to a Wurlitzer. She wasn't herself, a blood Wurlitzer. I think, if I'm remembering that right. But there was, in Taos, there's a lot of artists, but there's also a lot of legacy of artists, Arthur Dove and George O'Keeffe. I mean, there's that whole legacy right around there of artists that came there in the early part of the century, and then, painted because of the, the light, the light, which is true. I mean, the light is different. And it started out where I had this one painting that I had created that was a wild boar with me, an image of me. It was pretty big, kissing each other, kissing the wild boar. And I was like, okay, that's a place to start. I have the story. I'm going to illustrate this story. I brought it with me. I brought all of this stuff with me, all these like silk screens and everything. I'm going to illustrate the story. I'm going to make these books. And I got there, and for 3 weeks, all I did was make shit. Really, literally shit. It was crap. It was terrible. So a friend of mine took me into Santa Fe, and we, who I knew from Frenchtown actually, and she lived in Cerrillos. So she took me to Santa Fe, and it was very lovely. I looked at a lot of artwork. And I had this moment, because I love Susan Rothenberg, and I just kept, I know you guys know Susan Rothenberg is a painter who paints horses. Well, she doesn't just paint horses, but that's what kind of propelled her into fame. So, and she lived in New Mexico, and she was alive then, before she died. I didn't meet her, but I wish I should have. I should have descended upon her studio and said, oh my God, but I did not. But I thought, if she could do horses for years and years and years, if I'm stuck on these wild boar because they have the best tusks, it was so fun to just paint these tusks and make these like gnarly faces, I thought I'm just going to let myself go for it. And then they started to abstract, and then the story started to evolve, and I let go of having to paint them. And that's when, for me, painting became painting, and telling these stories became separate. They were drawings. They were drawings that were drawn, in consistent formats. I mean, you could see, like, doing a series, for me, I decide on a format, and it helps me, like limiting the process. So you limit it to paper that's gessoed in acrylic paint. That's going to be grommeted and stitched around the outside. Okay. All of them are like that. And once you do that, that limitation opens up so many doors. So the actual limitation of deciding that the wild boar was okay just to paint and abstract, that moment, the work just flowed. It just kept coming. And I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I did 57 paintings. I counted them. That number 57, there's something about 57. I'm telling you, it's a magic number. Ketchup? Oh my God, so many things are 57. Once you start seeing 57, you start realizing 57 is
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It does a lot of things. 57 is magic. Kind of a little magic, yeah.
I'm afraid to be like the State Farm guy, but I have to ask, why they're like this. What's going on with this?
Yeah, and that was the, it was almost like that was the position that the raccoon had when the raccoon, I don't know if it was, I didn't want to say she or he, walked up to my car. So it's some kind of, for me, reverential, but, you know, like not being attacking, being like, you know.
Well, that was kind of my question too, because when I walked, I've never seen any of this stuff before. And when I walked in here, I said, oh, look, I saw the raccoon there, and you know, it's got its raccoon paws, which are very human-like. It's also part of why raccoons are such a pain in the ass to live around.
Yeah, because they can
But-
pick stuff up.
But then I realized, oh look, and you can see the front paws on all of them, which later occurred to me. They're all standing on their hind legs.
They're all standing on their hind legs.
And that's not usually how you see these
No,
animals.
it's not usually how you see it. Take
And oftentimes when you see them in that pose, you should back up.
often. So the idea of putting them on their hind legs was to make them be vertical like we are.
Yeah.
Number one, put them in a position where they're not threatening, they're just standing up for themselves. You know, there's that, you know, decision. That was actually the last painting I did. And I felt like it was the last one, felt like it was almost, I was kind of starting to get to cute, and I didn't want to go to cute. So I was starting to kind of getting cute.
Their hand is cute.
Yeah, so and then I started to like change the scale and things started to change, and then I was like, I wasn't sure. But yeah, no, that's a good question, because then you just said that, I'm like, oh my God, they are. Did I ever not notice that? But I did notice that, being the hands are important.
Yeah, as you said, they're not like threatening, you know, you can kind of just.
Well, I don't know, that was kind of
Invite
thick. That would make me back up.
Howling.
They're doing hallelujah.
There are a lot of hallelujah. A little bit of like, you know, angst, that kind of thing. That kind of thing. Kelly, what do you
I
have?
was gonna say, these, I haven't seen these before either, and they have such extraordinary character, each one of them, and they have the similarities of the submissiveness and the anthropomorphism of being a person, like, so they really, each one of them has a story, and I've been staring at that guy with the hallelujah, and I was thinking like, praise Jesus! And so he has a completely different demeanor than any of the rest of them, but they have such, I feel like they could be amazing stories together in some bizarre grouping of them, but I wanted to ask you, A, about that book, and B, I love all the boards. So it's 57 boards you did in New Mexico?
57 boards in New
I remember,
Mexico.
Susie and I love the board because that's our Chinese zodiac.
Oh.
And they, of course, are the smartest and cleanest of them all. The board. I wanted to know if, first of all, when you went to New Mexico, did you write the story first and then started silk screen boards and painting boards?
Well, that's a good question. I wrote the first chapter. So the first chapter wound up being split between book 1 and book 2.
Right.
So this was like the first chapter. And then book 3, so it's like book 1 was just like, you know, the wild boar. It's like, boar. And then book 2 is chomping on the tender parts, which is a little nod to Maggie Nelson, if anybody knows who Maggie Nelson is. Maggie Nelson, okay. Gotta be Maggie Nelson, very, very provocative. And this is The Dirge of Academia, which I wrote when I came back. So I added to them. So the very first one, the very first story, I was 18 by 24 drawing. So the original drawings are 18 by 24. I mean, I would love to see them together, you know, the drawings themselves, because they really are much nicer than this. And they're not this scale. The original drawings are large. But I was like, when I went to the second story, I reduced it. So I was like, let's just do them a little smaller. I could get through these drawings a little faster. So yeah, I made them smaller, and I was able to then, once I wrote the story, to do this one. So yeah, it kind of evolved. I have more wild boar in me. I just.
Now, I hear that about, I'm not like pushing the wild boar. I want to know about the book you just read with Liz. Is that That's new to me.
That's book- that's book 5.
Mexico, because in the nascent days of Facebook, it was like Dickens. I followed that horror story. You definitely published those on some sort of social media.
I did.
remember reading that.
Yeah, I did.
was
I
always
posted.
curious about which came first, the drawing or the book.
The
I was
book- the
thinking,
first
like,
chapter
in
one.
this case, with these guys, it could be the drawing that comes first.
It could be the drawing that comes first, and it could go that way. Yeah. Often, stories can sometimes be written and then illustrated. Often when I'm working, and I've done a lot of this in the past, where I have, and you've probably seen some of that work too, is where I'm looking at something I painted and then I start responding to it. Just right on the piece, like no editing, no like planning, and just at some point it just works itself out and just sort of ends in the right place. It always does. I don't know why. Maybe I just make the letters bigger as I'm getting to the end or smaller or something, but it always seems to kind of fit. And then I don't worry about if there's spelling mistakes. I don't worry about if it's laid out because I'm just part of the painting, right? So I've done a lot of that. So it can go either way. It could go either from being inspired by the piece, or the piece can be illustrating the story. Anybody else got a
Question about the books themselves, are they marketed for like adults or children or?
No, they're marketed for adults, and it's a
Where are they
problem.
sold?
Adult bookstores.
Not the same ones.
That's almost, they look like they're like, it actually says, I think it says right on them, not for children or something. It's actually like, because it's like, because I did a book show with these, and all the people who were trying to buy stuff for their kids' book section were like reading it and being like, no. Especially chomping on the tender parts, which is
So you
about getting
sell
your first
them
period.
at, like, say, the Frenchtown bookstore or wherever?
I had them in the Frenchtown bookstore before the new owners came in. They were there for a while, and they're on Amazon. I mean, that's where I made these because I didn't know how else to I didn't want to print 100,000 of them, right?
We did a reading in the bookstore in Tewksbury.
I did a reading in the bookstore in Tewksbury a couple of years ago, or last year. I don't remember.
The Howling.
Was it last
What's it
summer?
called? The Howling.
Howling Bassett.
Howling Bassett Books, right? I've done that, and I might do one at Frenchtown. I just haven't really pursued it.
The
Bookstore.
Yeah, the bookstore.
Next to
Next
the.
They're
to
an
the-
antique place.
It's close to the library. It's on that same stretch of the library. It's on that side of the street, just a little closer to town. It's a little house. It's a nice little house. It's a sweet bookstore.
Lived there 33 years. I know there was a bookstore.
This is relatively new.
A couple of years, yeah.
Well, there's been a bookstore in that location for quite a while.
At Tewksbury?
Oh, no, I'm
You're talking about
talking
Frenchtown. Oh yeah, that's been there for a
Oh,
while.
yeah.
They just changed owners.
I don't get the Tewksbury much.
To go to Tewksbury more
Yeah.
active, lots of books. Anybody else? Well, I'd like to thank y'all for coming. It was a beautiful turnout, lots of friends and new friends, and I appreciate this so much. It really is. It's really.